In this video, I'm going to talk about a couple of basic locks that you will see on today's modern pocket knife. Greetings and welcome back to the channel, and welcome if it's your first time here. This video is catered to someone who's just coming into the hobby, young or old, male or female, doesn't really matter, and this might be a good spot for you to start. We'll call it Knife Locks 101. For the hardcore, seasoned professional collector, this video might be a little bit boring for you. On the other hand, your comments will help these people even more than this video, because I'm bound to make mistakes, especially when it comes to terminology. I don't really want to get too deep into it, just to minimize my mistakes.
How dare you!
All right, so you've just come into the hobby and you're just starting to collect knives, and you're liking knives and considering collecting knives. And this might be a good starting point when it comes to locks. All right, so back in the day, back in my day and many others, we had what was called a slip joint knife. Now, the slip joint knife didn't have a lock. You could just kind of do this, and it's a spring tension type of thing. These are back springs, and there is some tension there. Now, the one thing that I need to mention on all of these is exercising some caution, right? Some common sense caution. So, just slamming this shut with your finger in the way will probably cause a little bit of harm. I know, speaking from experience, sometimes I would do this. I have done this and not got this finger out of the way and slammed the blade down and catching a little bit of the flesh in there. Has happened to me. I'm not saying that's going to happen to you, but exercise caution with everything here. So there are people that collect these types of knives with no locks. There's some people who don't collect knives like this at all. Nowadays, I'm thinking more people are collecting a little bit of everything, which is a good thing, because the hobby is a lot of fun. There's a lot of things to learn. Anyways, so that's a slip joint knife, no lock. Somewhere along the line, someone decided to put in a lock on a knife, and I want to say it's Buck with the 110. But again, I probably could make a mistake. 1961, 1962, somewhere in there, they came out with what's known as a back lock. The lock is located on the back. In this case, it's at the very back. And we'll come across another one here where this button thing or pokey thing is in here. So a back lock. It's a strong lock. The only thing that worth mentioning here is with a back lock like this on this particular buck is you need two hands to close it. And when you do, disengage the lock, your hand is still in the path of travel. So always think of the path of travel and make sure you get your hands out of the way. But outside of that, it's a great lock. I like the back lock. Again, it comes in many different shapes and sizes and flavors. Here's one. I customized this Buck 110 a long time ago. I even threw what's called a half stop, where the blade is coming down and it stops. It's not locked, it just stops. But again, same thing, exercise caution. Now, I like the half stop on a Buck 110. A lot of people think that that's, a major taboo thing to do, but it just kind of gives you a chance to get your fingers out of the way. It's an extra little, hey, wake up kind of a thing. And yes, so there you go, the back lock. I like it. It's a good lock. Here's another example of the back lock, except you'll notice that the button or the pokey thing is in the middle instead of at the back. Now, this one comes with a different name. It's called a triad lock because its inventor did a couple of modifications on the inside here. They're very similar to the insides on here. However, some modifications went on and changed the strength and the name, right? But in this case here, you can see the same type of bar, which is way back here. It's a longer bar. This one here is much shorter, and there's still a spring involved. back lock. Still a back lock. Might be called the triad lock, but it's still a back lock. Now the advantage to the back lock in this particular case, where it's located, is that you can close it one-handed. Again, if you're exercising caution. If you don't exercise caution, you could hurt yourself. You know, if your hand was in the way, you might get cut. So be careful. But if you're interested in a triad lock, if you like that, there are some excellent videos online. Just type in strength of the triad lock and you will be pleasantly surprised. So that's the back lock. The slip joint, the back lock. And then somewhere, I think after that, maybe came the liner lock. Again, I don't know the timelines, but a liner lock is just that. It's a liner on the inside of the handles here. Push the liner out of the way, and you can close the knife. The advantage to the liner lock is, yes, it's one-handed as well, but path of travel. So it's locked. You need to disengage the lock to close it. Your thumb has to be in the path of travel. You have to move it out of the way before you close it fully. I don't know of another way to close it without having your finger or thumb in the path of travel. So something to keep in mind. Some will argue that the liner lock is not as strong as other locks that are in here, but I tend to disagree. There are some very strong liner locks. Here's an example of one where the liner is extremely thick. This thing is a bank vault. Now there are lots of videos, especially the older videos of torture testing some of these types of knives, the locks, the liner locks, the back locks. And we're going to come up on a couple of other locks here as well. But the liner lock, I think, is a very good lock too. I think it's very fidgety and it's also very smooth. It can be made very smooth. This one here in particular, there's a detent ball, which is kind of here. It's a shame. It should have probably been up about there. So it's a little bit different geometry. But anyway, I don't want to get too far into the minutia on there. Liner lock. Here's another example of a liner lock on this Victorinox knife. The liner is in the same spot, except in order to disengage, you press this button. You see what they've done here is they allow you to press the button here. Otherwise, if that wasn't there, it would have to be sticking up a little bit so you could get a little bit of purchase on there so you could close it. But essentially, it's a liner lock. It's a liner lock with a little bit of a button. There's modifications to all types of these locks out there. Now, a close cousin to the liner lock is the compression lock. Now, the compression lock is basically a liner lock, except it's up on the top. So in the liner lock, we have it down here in the traditional location. However, on the compression lock, it's located up on the top. And without getting into the physics of the compression lock, it's essentially a liner lock. It's just changed. It's in a different location. So the geometry and some mechanism changes there. But one of the advantages to the compression lock is that once you disengage and close, you have nothing in the path of travel. So you could close it one-handed, you could close it with two hands, but there's never ever anything in the way. So there's an advantage there. It's a pretty strong lock too. I don't know how it compares, on the scale of 1 to 10 to all these other locks, but I'm sure if you really wanted to get out there and find out, you probably could. I'm sure there's a video out there comparing the compression lock to a frame lock and strength or something like that. Compression lock. Okay, liner lock. Another one that was popular, very popular, made popular by Chris Reeve knives is the frame lock. Now the frame lock, I should probably get a Chris Reeve for this video. Yeah, maybe that's what I should do. How could I do a knife video on locks without the Chris Reeve?
How dare you!
Sebenza. This one's the Sebenza 25, and he invented the frame lock. Now the frame lock is very similar to the liner lock in a sense, but it's on the actual frame. One might argue that if you took a piece of G10 and put it on here, would this now be a liner lock? Don't know. Anyways, but you can see that the frame lock is much more stout, and you also have to get your fingers out of the way of the path of travel as you're closing it. But if you're wondering where the frame lock came from, it came from this guy here who came up with this company and this lock, the frame lock. Okay, so the frame lock, got a couple of examples here. Here's another example of a frame lock. This one opens with a flipper tab, but we're talking about the locks, same thing. Somewhere along the line, they decided to put in some kind of a piece of metal on here so it didn't get worn out. I don't know what it's called. I think it's called a lock face or interface or something like that. As far as I know, it's replaceable because as the steel on steel wears, maybe that's why they put it in there. This is titanium. Titanium reacts different to the steel. These are all the little minutia things that our friends in the comments that can help us with. But anyways, that is a liner, a frame lock. Very, very strong too. I've seen a lot of videos, old videos, on torture testing the frame lock, and they were pretty good. Now this one here is unique. It's also a frame lock, but what makes this one very unique is it's got a little button here that you spin. I think it's called a roto block or something like that. And when it's engaged, it prevents this thing from opening. So it's quite solid. It's very stout. And you're going to come up with all kinds of little subtleties on these knives in the locks that might be doing little things that other people aren't doing. So this is not a standard feature on all knives, but it's a feature on this particular knife, the roto block. I think it's kind of cool, especially if you're outdoors and you're using it a little bit more hard. It's just something to consider. Some will argue that your folder, if you're using it properly, it's not going to close up on you. But I know there's people that it has happened to, where it has closed up on them. So again, back to the caution thing. So frame locks, right? Frame locks, liner locks, back locks. Here's an interesting one. This is a very different one. I'm going to call this a barrel lock because it looks like a barrel, right? And it's kind of turning. And you just make sure that it's in that position, and you can open it up and then give it a spin. And that thing's pretty solid. So, you know, if you're, I don't know, cutting meat or you're doing something where you're at potential of closing, having this lock is a good feature. Another good feature on this particular lock is that you can lock it closed, so it's not going to accidentally open up. And I guess it could possibly accidentally open up. I mean, this is not very strong. There's no tension here. So, you know, with moving it around, it could be in that position and you go to reach for it. That's gonna be painful. So having this extra lock is not a bad thing. I'm going to call it a barrel lock. Maybe it's called something else. I don't know. Here's a different one. This one essentially is a button lock. Now, I believe this company calls this one the deadbolt lock, but essentially it's a button lock. You're going to see button locks a lot in the modern world these days, and they all have their own names as well. But essentially, you're pushing a button and you're closing the knife. Now, the advantage here as well is you can press it and there's nothing in the path of travel. So that's a good thing. There is some fidgetability, I guess, if that's what you're into. The strength, I don't know. I think it's a pretty strong lock. The mechanism on the inside, there are tons of videos on the deadbolt lock. If that's something you're interested in, by all means, check that out. But it's a button lock. Button locks come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Here's a button lock on a utility knife. It will not open unless you press this button, and then you can open up the utility knife, use the knife, press the button, and close it. The mechanism on the inside is going to be vastly different than the one I just showed you here on the deadbolt, but essentially you're pressing a button to use it. Now, this one here, you can open it without pressing the button. Really, the only difference that I can see there. Now, another lock is the Axis lock, A-X-I-S. Now, essentially, the Axis lock is a crossbar lock. It's a bar that crosses the blade of the tang of the blade. I knew I was going to make some mistakes along the way. Essentially, it's a bar that crosses perpendicular to the blade tang. I guess that's the simplest way I could put it. Now, Benchmade, as far as I know, invented this lock and called it the Axis lock. However, the patent ran out or something like that. So every company in the world, not every company, but a lot of people are making the same lock and giving it their own name. An example. Would be this SOG, and it's the same kind of lock, bar perpendicular to the blade. This is called an XR lock. Some will argue that this one's stronger than the Axis lock, and that's true too. There's going to be all kinds of details in the mechanisms of all of these. But anyways, I digress. XR lock, Axis lock, and I think I have another one somewhere. Maybe I don't. Oh, here it is. The same kind of concept here. You can't really see it very well, but there's a bar going across here. This one's very strong, I find. But anyways, I think this one is called the... Ooh, boy. I thought I knew the name of this one. Maybe I don't know the name of it.
How dare you!
I'll put it down here if I remember somewhere along the way. Anyways, yeah, Axis lock on steroids and a different name. It's too bad I can't remember the name of this one. Anyways, so there you go. I'm just going to call them Axis locks. Axis lock. Why not? An advantage to the Axis lock is, again, your fingers are out of the way. Your fingers are always out of the way. You can drop shut it. Anyway, I think you get the point. A very unique and strange lock is the Scorpion lock. I don't have any other knife like this in my collection. Back in the day, I had a knife called the Marksman, which was a similar take. It was kind of putting pressure down on this backspace. I believe that was called a, strap lock or something like that. Anyway, the Scorpion lock, kind of similar, is this bar here is under tension. It's being pushed this way with a strong spring. And then once you pull up on that spring, it gives you a chance to close it. Another advantage with the Scorpion lock is that your fingers are out of the path of travel. You could close it with two hands, but it's essentially, pretty good. Tons of fidgetability when it comes to this stuff. Some of you like to do that. You like these for that reason only, some people. And some people like all factors of the pocket knife. So anyways, there's the Scorpion lock. It was invented by the same person who invented the triad lock, the modern take of the back lock. Scorpion lock. And I think that covers pretty much all the locks that I have on this table. Unless I missed something, I got to look through the viewfinder here, back lock. Yeah, I think we're good. Now there's a whole swack. There's tons of new locks out there. Use and explore and whatever the heck you got to do. And I hope this video was helpful to someone just starting out. Maybe they didn't know what a button lock was. Maybe didn't know the origins of the axis lock or the frame lock. I made a lot of mistakes in this video, and that's where the comments will be helpful. A lot of you are out there, you're very knowledgeable, and anybody coming onto this video, please read the comments, take a look at them, because there's a lot of information down there. All right, in the meantime and in between time, I will see you on the next video of what type. I have no idea. Bye for now.